Cheers and welcome my friends, I'm Horath and we are playing Hearts of Iron 4 on veteran difficulty as the Germans. Before we start, please note that Paradox has been so kind as to provide me with a press copy of this game free of charge, so if you're basing your purchasing decision on my Let's Play series, then keep in mind that I might have a positive bias towards the game and towards Paradox. We're playing as Germany and we're playing with the German version. We're going to start 1936 because I rather like to be able to build up before the war starts. And you're going to notice that the German version has some of its own idiosyncrasies. And that is because Paradox have to cover themselves legally. You can see that Adolf Hitler has been blackened out. And that is because in Germany, Nazi symbols are forbidden. You make yourself liable if you show them. And there has been a judicial verdict against Wolfenstein 20 years ago, against Wolfenstein, that basically forbade the selling of that game. And that is just Paradox covering themselves. They blackened out Adolf Hitler and some of the other evil Nazi guys. I can understand that they do that. I'm fine with it. I'm not really happy with the judicial situation in Germany, because I don't think that looking at the portrait of Hitler is going to turn yourself into a Nazi instantly. That's odd. I'd rather see him in here and see people have people see him for what he is. A mass murderer and demagogue, leading millions of people into misery and death and slaughtering a whole people. I'm still going to play as Germany just because I am interested in the strategic challenge, but I'm not a friend at all to the Nazi cause. But I've been playing Nazi Germany in Hearts of Iron 3. And I always find it interesting to test the game with Nazi Germany, because I know quite a bit about the Nazi history, as every German should, lest we repeat the mistakes of the past. And it's a good way to test the game to see how well it is able to simulate historical circumstances and all that. So we're going to play Germany. We're going to have some national spirits. We're going to have the general staff, which is going to increase our division organization by 5%. Organization is a stat of your land units that basically determines how long your units can attack before they have to recover. And it's also going to increase our planning speed by 25%. You can make battle plans, and this basically reduces the time that we need to be able to attack an enemy, or reduce the time until we are ready to attack an enemy. And we're also a bitter loser. We lost the last World War, and we are pretty pissed about it and feel like we've been made responsible for the whole World War without it being our fault alone. And that reduces our ideology drift towards other ideologies. So we're basically going to stay staunch national socialists. Let's just jump in. We're going to play on veteran difficulty, which is going to reduce our production efficiency by 20%. It's going to increase the time that we need to research things, and it's going to reduce the political power that we gain by 25%. We're going to be led by Adolf Hitler, obviously. Going to be fascists in a totalitarian regime. We're going to never have an election, and the NSDAP is going to be our ruling party. I'm not going to play on Iron Man mode because I play on that off screen, but on screen for a Let's Play, it's just not worth the risk. If my save file gets corrupt, the whole series ends, and we can't have that. I don't want that. And then we're going to play with historical AI focuses on. That basically determines if the countries are going to roughly do what they did in history, or if they're going to deviate from that. I'm going to play with that on just because I'm interested to see what I can do with Germany. So let's jump in. I'm going to try and explain the game system as fast and as good as I can, because you're not going to understand the things that I do if you don't have at least a rough understanding of the game system. So I would try to play Germany with the hindsight of knowing what will decide the war, and that is blitzkrieg, mobile warfare with tanks, with panzers, and with the Luftwaffe, with the German Air Force. Those are the things that we're going to concentrate on: tanks and planes to give our tanks some support. And one of the problems that the German Reich had was that it had a lot of resource shortages, especially late in the war when they lost some of the oil fields. Resource system in Hearts of Iron is a very interesting one. So let's have a look at the resource map mode. You can see that we got not a lot of oil, which is this red blob, this red black drop. We got 4 oil in Hanover, and later if we can get Austria through the Anschluss, and we're going to get another 2 in Lower Austria. And that is not a whole lot. You can see that there's some oil in Romania, and there's some oil over here in Baku and Armenia, and there's some to be had over here. But it's a long way over there. I am not sure how fast we're going to go to attack the Soviet Union. But the resource system in this game is interesting, as you can't really stockpile things. You get an income, and you're using that income to produce things in your military production. And if your income matches what you're trying to produce, then you have full production speed and efficiency. If it does not match that, as signified by this red background, then you're going to produce at a reduced speed. You can see that we are missing rubber and we're missing oil. And before the war we can import that, but as soon as the war starts we won't really be able to do that very well. So my idea is, as hindsight is 2020, we're gonna go for some synthetic production of oil and of rubber. Rubber is quite a bit more important, because we don't have anything of that at all in Europe. There is, it has a little tire symbol, the rubber, and there's not a lot of that in the whole of Europe. There is a lot over here in East Asia. There's 94 rubber in Indochina. So France has a lot of rubber. There's some over here in Siam. A lot over here, and a huge amount of here, which, oh, that is crazy. Holy crap. Well, yeah, that's definitely going to help the United Kingdom. But yeah, we don't have a lot of rubber, and there's no easy way to get anything, so we definitely have to get that synthetically. And we need rubber to produce planes, we need rubber to produce our motorized brigades, and we can't really stockpile that. So the strategy that I used in Hearts of Iron 3, where I just tried to stockpile as much oil before the war started as I could, doesn't really apply here. On the other hand, we don't need oil to use the tanks once they are built, and that is also something to consider. But yeah, tanks and planes is what we want. Then we're gonna go into the construction. Construction is split in this game between civilian factories and military factories. The civilian factories you need for 3 things. You need it to produce consumer goods, and depending on your economical laws you have to dedicate a bigger or a smaller percentage of your civilian factories to producing consumer goods, as signified by this toaster, but it's just symbolic for lots of other things. And you can use these also to build military factories. So basically your civilian factories build your military factories, and they're also going to build these synthetic refineries, which will allow us to produce oil and rubber in our own provinces, which is going to help make us less dependent on importing that kind of stuff. There are two types of buildings. As you can see, the world is divided into states. And these states consist of provinces, and there are buildings that you can build in a statewide, and there are provinces, buildings that you can build in a single province. So, for example, a land fort is going to be a single province, like over here, the Maginot Line in France. That is in that exact province over here. That province lies in the state of Alsace, but it is that the fort lies in that particular province. And the state buildings, there are two types of state buildings. There are shared buildings and there are normal state buildings. So infrastructure, for example, I can build more infrastructure over here, and that won't take the place of something else. So even if I build up to 10 infrastructure, that won't take away space for building air bases in these provinces. While the space for these buildings is shared. So if I build a military factory in Thüringen, for example, then that takes away one space that I will not be able to use for a civilian factory or for a synthetic refinery. By the way, if you want to go down the synthetic route, then note that researching down that tree does not increase the efficiency of the synthetic plants, but rather allows you to build more synthetic refineries per state. So at the moment we can build one synthetic refinery that gives us 5 oil and 2 rubber. If we research that, we can build a second synthetic refinery in a state. So for big countries, it's only worth it to research that if you have built a synthetic refinery in all your states. If you have a look at the states map mode, we have Wittenberg, Oberbayern, Niederbayern, Franken, Hessen, Westfalen. We've got all these states where we can build synthetic refineries, and I hazard the guess that we're going to get more states. So until we have not built all the refineries, I'm not going to research the next level for the synthetics. But that is my idea. We're going to build synthetic refineries to make us less dependent. And we're also going to build civilian factories. Now, civilian factories allow you to build the military factories. They allow you to build the infrastructure, synthetic refinery, and all that. You can convert civilian factories to military factories by going over here to the convert thing. And then you can click either on that thing over here to convert one military factory to one civilian factory, or vice versa, convert one civilian factory to one military factory. That's going to cost you something, and the cost is a bit dependent on your economical law. So at the moment we're at partial mobilization, which means we have to dedicate 20% of our civilian factories to producing consumer goods. And we get some bonuses to converting civilian factories to military factories and vice versa. And we're also faster in building military factories. Because we're fascists, we can also move to the war economy, even before war has started, because we are a bit crazy like that, and we're anticipating war, which will allow us to dedicate less of our civilian factories to producing consumer goods. And that basically frees them up to do other things. And it also reduces the cost to convert civilian factories to military factories as well. So that's pretty good. So that is one of my plans: building civilian factories first, and later we're gonna build military factories. But we have to strengthen our industrial base. The last use for civilian factories, besides building things, is that you can trade them away for resources. So for example, if we wanted to import oil from, let's say, the United States, you can see that they are not the most willing trading partners, but they're willing to trade with us. So if we go over here, we can trade away our civilian factories for trade goods. So we could get a maximum of 128 oil from the United States by trading away all our 16 free civilian factories. It's not that useful because then we could produce stuff at a higher efficiency. At the moment we're lacking oil. You can see that over here. We're lacking 13 oil and 5 rubber. So it's definitely a good idea to get those resources, because we're producing at a reduced speed at the moment. But we also need the civilian factories to build other civilian factories and to build up our power base. So I'm gonna go ahead and start building civilian factories. You can only fit a certain amount into all of these states, but it's gonna be fine. So we're gonna go ahead and build at least one round of civilian factories everywhere. Alright, so that is done, and you can see now that we're using 15 factories to build our first new civilian factory in Oberbayern, down here. And then the last of our civilian factories that is free is going to start building the civilian factory in Franken over here. And obviously there's kind of a snowball effect involved in this. The more civilian factories that we have, the faster we can produce, and we can also research construction speed increases and all that. So that's gonna help us. We really want to focus on civilian factories for the moment. What else? Okay, so we're building these civilian factories, and we do have a couple of construction things. So these construction lines do have a certain efficiency, and the longer a certain construction line is building a specific type, the more efficient it gets, because the workers get accustomed to what they need to do and all that. Okay. And if you're changing inside the same type, let's say we were to research infantry equipment 2, and we were to switch them, then we would lose less production efficiency through the change than if we were to change that to tanks, for example. So it is quite beneficial to have at least one production line for all these things. You can see that we're allocating 10 military factories to producing infantry equipment at the moment. Our total need is currently filled, but we're going to build a lot of infantry divisions with that equipment. So we always want to produce infantry equipment. And you can see that we're building support equipment, and we can basically reduce the amount of factories that we allocate to that line. But it's at least a good idea to keep at least one factory in a production line, so that you can get some of that production efficiency bonus if you're changing. So if we get a better tank, then we can still keep something. Okay, so that is the production interface. There are two types of production interfaces. We got the military factories and we got the dockyards. You can see that that is allocated differently. I'm gonna go way down on the other things. I mainly just want to build submarines to annoy the allies later on. That is going to be our naval strategy. Just build submarines and annoy them as long as possible until we can conquer Europe and start our attack on England. It needs to happen at some point, but until then we're going to just try and keep the United Kingdom at bay. We can't really compete openly against them. Okay, so that is the production. You've seen the trade. Diplomacy, we're going to go into that after the political power. So got political power over here. We're going to gain 2.5 per day, influenced by Adolf Hitler, our leader, who increases it by 50%, the base value, and the veteran difficulty that reduces it by 25%. Okay, so if we were to play on normal difficulty, we'll gain 3, but now we gain just 1. Now, what do you use that political power for? Well, firstly, to change those laws that I already showed you. So we can change the economical law, we can change the trade law. which has effects on how well your factories are producing. Obviously, free trade is helping your factories to produce more, but you're also going to lose resources to the open market that you might rather keep to produce your tanks and all that. And then we have the conscription law that increases the amount of people that we can recruit from our population. It will have other effects. We're currently at limited conscription. We're recruiting 2.5% of our population. And we can go up to extensive conscription because we're fascists, which is going to increase the training time by 10%, but gives us basically double the amount of manpower that we have up here. Currently we have 1.3 million, 270,000 in the army, 30,000 in the air force, in the Luftwaffe, and 22,000 in the navy, in the Kriegsflotte. Okay, and then you can use your political power to get some political advisors. You can see that some of these evil Nazi guys are blackened out again, like Heinrich Himmler, the leader of the SS, or Joseph Goebbels, the Reichspropaganda minister, or Rudolf Hess. All these guys have been convicted of war crimes in the Nuremberg processes. And each of these guys gives you different benefits. So, for example, if we were to choose Martin Bormann or Rudolf Hess, that will increase our political power gain. So you spend some political power to gain even more. That is definitely a beneficial thing to take early on. And apart from the political advisors, you can choose certain guys on here. You can choose a military theorist, and depending on what you take, you're going to have different benefits from it. We're going to go into that later, bit by bit, and you can choose some companies that help you. Depending on what you choose, you're going to have different benefits. So if you choose Siemens, then we're going to have an easier time researching electronics. If we choose the IG Farben, then we're going to have an easier time researching synthetic production of oil and rubber and all that. It's fairly self-explanatory over here. We've got that for tanks, for ships, for aircraft, and for materials. And then you've got military staff down here. You can have a chief of army. Some of these guys are locked behind certain focuses, and we're going to get to that in a minute. And then you have the military high command. So you can, for example, use Erwin Rommel to increase your panzers, your tanks. And all these guys you buy with political power. So that is what we're going to do with the political power. And then you can use the political power also to do some diplomacy. For example, one of the things that I think we need to do is try to boost the party popularity of the Nazi party in in the USA to maybe stop them from joining the Allies. That could actually be really useful. It's going to cost us some political power per day, but it's definitely going to be pretty helpful. So we're going to do that. We can try to stage a coup. So if we make the Nazi party strong enough, then we can try to bring them to power with force. But we'll hold off on that for now. And now the thing that we need to cover for the political power, last but not least, is the national focus. So whenever you choose a national focus, you're going to pay 1 political power per day until the focus is completed. So each of these things basically costs you 70 focus. And this is the way the game simulates certain historical circumstances and decisions. And yeah, there are quite a few interesting options over here. So we can decide to go the historical route and start collaborating with Soviet Russia to increase our panzer research. That is something that Nazi Germany did, and that was already started by the Weimaran Republic. because Germany was not allowed to have heavy weapons, panzers, so they started a secret training program and basically established panzer training schools in Soviet Russia, and basically worked together. The Germans got something out of it, and the Soviet Russia got also something out of it. And then there are some historical things in here. So, for example, we can go for the Rhineland, for remilitarization of the Rhineland. You might not know this, but I'm pretty sure you know this if you are interested in the game. But after Germany lost World War I, the Treaty of Versailles stated that Germany was not allowed to put any troops in this area, in this red area. And that is because France still felt threatened by Germany, and they basically wanted to stop them from being able to attack them by amassing troops on their border. And at some point, Hitler just ignored that by stationing troops in the Rhineland. German troops were cheered as they went into the Rhineland, and the Allies, instead of calling Hitler's bluff, said, "Oh well, then he is just marching in his own backyard." And that would have been the point to stop Hitler in a way, because Germany is in no way prepared to actually fight a war against the Allies at this point. We have 30 divisions. The Allies could easily crush us at the moment, but they're not really going to. But by remilitarizing the Rhineland, we can then go for more historical things, like going for the Anschluss of Austria, and then we can demand the Sudetenland, part of Czechoslovakia. And then we can take all of Czechoslovakia, but we can also go ahistorical routes, like, for example, demanding Slovenia, old parts of the Austria-Hungary. Down here, that is Slovenia, if you have a look at the states. And we can basically say this was a part of Austria-Hungary after we have done the Anschluss, and we want that back. That should be part of the German Reich. And if they accept, we get that part, and if not, then we get a reason for war, and we can go after Yugoslavia down here, and we can decide if we go to befriend China or if we befriend Japan. These are mutually exclusive. That is what this sign means. And we can also try to be friends with Soviet Russia, or we can be enemies with the USSR. We can decide to befriend Czechoslovakia, or we can, basically destroy them by going for the Treaty of Munich. And we can also decide to befriend Poland over here. We can either go for Danzig or war, or we can try to exchange Slovakia for Danzig. There's a lot of interesting stuff in here that we're going to go into in the upcoming episodes. So I've covered the national focus. I think we're going to go for the Rhineland, although, we're going to go for the remilitarization of the Rhineland. And let's just hope that the Allies don't call our bluff. And cover that, and the last thing that we need to cover is the recruitment and deployment. Well, this is fairly easy to explain. We got 4 research slots that we can use to research a lot of these things. It looks more intimidating than it really is. So we've got a couple of categories. We've got industry, we've got engineering that helps us research stuff faster. We've got an air doctrine. We have to choose one out of these 3. They are mutually exclusive. We already have researched the first thing in battlefield support. But we could go for one of the others and just lose the benefits of this doctrine. Then we can research new planes. We can choose a naval doctrine and research new ships. And we can go for a land doctrine. We're going to go for the mobile warfare doctrine, which is what Germans did historically. So try to go for the blitzkrieg with fast units that try to encircle enemies. And then you can research new artillery, new tanks, support battalions, and infantry weapons and stuff. And we got 4 slots that we can use to research in parallel. We get a penalty to research because we're playing on veteran, and we can get a 5th slot through this over here. Can go to this research slot if we get the necessary conditions fulfilled. So we have to go down this route, and we need the air innovations, and then we can go to rocketry and get another research slot, which is something that is fairly useful. And depending on the spot in this timeline, things are more expensive to research or less expensive. So if we're trying to research a 1945 tech, or let's say this 1941 tech in 1936, then it's going to cost us 5 times the time that it would cost us to research that in 1941. So you can try to focus on certain things, and there are certain focus research things that can help you research certain texts faster, but it's generally a good idea to roughly stay in the research year that you're in. And the last thing is recruitment and deployment. So you got divisions, that is how the armies are organized. You got armies, then you got divisions, and then you got companies or regiments. You can see that, for example, this infantry division consists of 9 companies of infantry. They got certain values, and they do have an engineer company and an artillery company as their support companies, basically helping them in certain ways. We can research more of those, and you can actually change that. You can design that in a different fashion. So if we, for example, wanted some mobile battalions in here, we could give this unit motorized infantry to maybe help them transport their stuff or whatever. We're gonna go into details of how to optimize these divisions later. There are a lot of stats over here that we're not going to talk about right now. We're just going to go through them as we need them. But to change that, you basically need army experience. Currently we have 0 army experience, and you get that either by letting your units exercise, or by just basically fighting and getting combat experience. So each of a newly added company would cost me 5 army experience, and making a new template would cost me even more. So if I were to go for a completely new one, I could just duplicate one of the existing ones and then change that to my heart's content, so that I can have, I don't know, different panzer divisions and whatnot. So now to train units, we're gonna train some infantry divisions. We want to train our units fairly fast, and we want to train infantry divisions first and foremost because they're pretty easy to put out. So how this works is you tell the units to train in here, then they're gonna collect the equipment, and as soon as they have collected a certain amount of equipment, they're gonna start to train. When you start training them, they are green, so, and they have certain penalties in combat, but they can reach the rank of trained before they get deployed, and then you can train them further by exercising them. And it's generally beneficial to have higher ranking troops, obviously, but you can deploy them untrained. You can deploy them green if you really need them. Well, we're training 5 infantry divisions in parallel, and we want them to deploy in, let's say, in Berlin, in Brandenburg. That's what they're gonna do. We haven't created an army yet, but we could basically tell them to join that army immediately after they have been trained. And yeah, I think that is about it. I'm gonna end the episode here. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, then please give me a like. If you didn't, then tell me why in the comments so I can improve. And if you want to see more of this series, then please consider subscribing to the channel if you want to know how this German campaign plays out. I do hope that you join me next time when we will set our research and tell our military factories what we're gonna do. I'm gonna try to get some of the resources that we are missing, and then we're gonna unpause and let history take its course. Thanks, and bye bye.